The new Steam Deck beta is even better than the last one. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Deck Ready, the channel all about the Steam Deck and other handheld PCs. This is my weekly news video where I talk about all the biggest Steam Deck news stories from around the internet. I've got 3 news stories saved up here in my cache, and we're gonna start out by talking about a delay, which is kind of weird, but also kind of understandable. So first up, this is only affecting people who pre-ordered their Steam Deck in Canada. And basically, if you already ordered it, like you paid to get your Steam Deck and not the first $5 thing, like you paid for your Steam Deck, you should be good. It's just that Valve hit some sort of snag in their distribution where they're basically having to delay new order emails. So if you haven't gotten your email yet and you were already scheduled to get that email like this week or next week, you're gonna have to wait a little bit longer while they make sure they fulfill the orders that have already been paid for. They're super clear about it in their post where they say, to clarify, the reason for this pause is so our distributor can make it through the backlog of paid orders in Canada before we resume sending emails to folks in this region. Now, I saw a few articles about this trying to make it a bigger controversy than it really is. It kind of sucks that the distributor hit a snag, but when you consider that all they've talked about for the past couple months is how much faster they're fulfilling orders with the Steam Deck, it's like, yeah, I think this snag ultimately will still get people who were in Q4 their Steam Deck faster than they initially would have otherwise. I was also happy to see in the comments on my last video when I was talking about how I don't really have much of an issue with this pre-order system, like putting $5 down and reserving your place in line for something. Yes, the wait until you can actually order it is going to suck, and then those few days you're going to have to wait for the thing to show up on your doorstep is going to be absolutely painful, but you have the peace of mind of knowing that when one is available for your spot in line, you're going to have the chance to order it, which is a lot better than something like the PS5 or the Xbox Series X, or over the past couple of years, graphics cards where you had to be at a certain website at a certain time, you had to have browsers or apps up on your phone and your computer. It was just a whole thing where you had to actually go through a ton of effort to buy something, versus this, where you showed up at 10 a.m. a little over a year ago, put down your $5, and whatever place in line you got is the place you got, and that's when you're gonna get your Steam Deck. And if you wanna get one earlier, you can head over to eBay and pay $1,000 for one. It's really, those are your two options, and I like it better than what I had to do with my PlayStation 5, which is open up the Amazon app while a plane was taking off and get my thumb furiously on the button to pre-order the PS5. I still got one, but it was a little bit stressful. So yeah, long story short, if you live in Canada and you've been seeing all these updates about how much faster these order emails are going out, and you're like, why haven't I received mine yet? It's only because they have to get through the ones that they've already sent out before they send out new ones, which honestly, I kind of get, and I don't really see the controversy with, but you can let me know what you think down in the comments below. One light controversy I see popping up more and more lately that I definitely can get on board with is the whole implementation of offline mode on the Steam Deck, because when you think about it, it actually makes sense why it's frustrating people. So when you buy a game on cartridge for Nintendo Switch, unless you see that big blue border across the top of the box that says you need to download like X number of gigabytes to be able to play this game. One example I can remember off the top of my head was the 2-pack collection of Resident Evil Revelations HD and Revelations 2 HD. You can just pop that cartridge in and get to play in the game. You never really have to connect to the internet. Like The Witcher 3 was a good example of a game where they did everything they could to get the entire game on the cartridge, to the point where they used a bigger cartridge than pretty much every other game on the Switch, and they did end up releasing a big patch for it that improved the frame rate a little bit, but all of the actual content was there on the cartridge. And with digital games, once that game is actually on your micro SD or the internal storage on your Switch, Nintendo's actually pretty generous with how long they wait before they make you connect to the internet before you can play that game again. On the Steam Deck, because Steam is all digital, it's a little more nebulous, and there are some issues with the online mode as a whole, which have been updated recently, but there's still some problems. So the first issue that I think really needs to be solved is the whole, is it in online mode or not? Because if you are around a Wi-Fi hotspot you've connected to and you put your Steam Deck in offline mode, sometimes like after 5 or 6 minutes, it'll just flip the Wi-Fi back on and reconnect to Steam and put it back into online mode. And that's fine, but if you're in online mode and you don't know it, the game is going to take longer to launch, because every time you open up a game on the Steam Deck, it checks the Steam cloud save to make sure that the local one isn't older than the one in the cloud, or if it is, you can get a little prompt that tells you, hey, the one in the cloud is newer. Do you want to download it and replace the one on your Steam Deck? Or do you want to upload the one on your Steam Deck and replace the one in the cloud? But if you're in offline mode, it skips all that and you can just play the game as normal. But if the thing's switching back to online mode on its own, you never really know if you're actually in offline mode, which is irritating. And then also, because this thing is a handheld PC, one limitation that I actually ran into is I wanted to play Jedi Fallen Order while I was on a flight, and I downloaded downloaded it onto my Steam Deck and I didn't launch it while I was in online mode. So I got on the plane, and because I'm extremely cheap, I fly Spirit, so there's no Wi-Fi. I launched Jedi Fallen Order. It installs the Origin launcher, and then it asks me to log in. And I'm like, shit, I don't have Wi-Fi. I can't play this game that I own on Steam because it has an external launcher that requires Wi-Fi. So even though I was in offline mode, I couldn't play the game. And also, I've ran into the issue before where I've downloaded a new game, whether it has a launcher or not. And if I don't launch that game in online mode once, when I go to launch it in offline mode for the first time, sometimes it throws me an error that the game cannot be launched. And I've definitely had that issue before on the PC side of Steam too. And to Valve's credit, they've done a good job updating offline mode to make it work better since the launch of the Steam Deck. But where I'd realistically like to see it get to is that the vast majority of games, once you download them, the license is at least stored on your Steam Deck for like, I don't know, 30 or 60 days. And within that time, you can launch the game and play it. The only issue I could see there for Valve is that they allow refunds. So theoretically, in that scenario, you could download the game, put your Steam Deck in offline mode, and then refund the game on Steam, and then keep your Steam Deck in offline mode for however long the license check period is. And I'm sure they can figure out a way for when you connect to the internet again to say, hey, this game that you refunded when you only had 90 minutes of playtime on it now suddenly has like 6 hours of playtime, so you're gonna have to buy that game or we'll remove it from your account. And that's just a solution that seems simple but might be complicated. Either way, I was able to come up with it in like 2 seconds, so that's why I feel like it's fair to request some better implementation of offline mode on the Steam Deck. Because for a lot of people, myself included, this thing has replaced the Nintendo Switch to the point where when I travel this week back to Michigan for my like annual Halloween stuff, I'm just bringing my Steam Deck and my gaming laptop. I'm not bringing my Nintendo Switch. So I don't have that crutch of being able to play a Switch game if I can't launch what I'm playing in offline mode. And I'm currently playing Shovel Knight Dig. And if I cannot play that on the plane, I'm gonna freak out because that game's absolutely incredible and runs perfectly on the Steam Deck. But thankfully, now that SteamOS is in a great spot, I feel like Valve can start focusing on these last 3 things, which are fixing online mode, making it so you can dual boot Windows on the Steam Deck, and also putting SteamOS on your gaming PC. Because I just got a new gaming laptop, and the second I can install SteamOS 3.0 on that thing, I am partitioning off a big chunk of my drive because I want that shader caching to happen so that I don't get stuttering in my games. And I know we just talked about a beta update for the Steam Deck in the last video, but now that that beta update is out and they've actually added some of the features to the stable update, they're already hard at work on the next beta, and it's bringing even better features than the last one. So one big problem people have had with the Steam Deck is connecting it to an external monitor because A, it's actually been kind of difficult to get it to scale right to the monitor you're using. B, it's also been difficult to change the output resolution to the monitor you're using. And C, there have been issues with certain resolutions and refresh rates, like 30 hertz really just throws everything out of whack when it comes to connecting your Steam Deck to an external monitor. And this beta update basically addresses all of it. And while past updates have addressed the scaling issue, and that's totally fine at this point in my experience at least, this new beta update fully addresses the other 2 issues. So if you have this new beta update, you can go into the settings and go to display settings, and now you can see all of the different resolutions that are supported by the monitor you're plugged into. Yes, that wasn't an option before. You basically had to set it by the actual game you were playing. So you would go into the game settings and then check a box and then pick a resolution you wanted it to output at on your monitor. I tested this, I think, with Infernax back when this update launched, and it worked perfectly to Valve's credit. But now you can just set the output resolution of the monitor within the actual Steam settings by going to display settings. So that's great. And they've also specifically fixed an issue with DCI 4K monitors, which are running at 4096 by 2160. I guess those were having issues with scaling, and also 30 hertz monitors. So if you have your monitor set at 30 hertz and this DCI 4K, you're gonna be just fine now automatically on your Steam Deck. But that's not all, because this next feature they added is one I didn't realize was a problem, but now that it's fixed, I'm extremely happy it is. Frame pacing when FSR is active has been improved across the board, and I will say that I have noticed some weird frame pacing issues with my Steam Deck where, you know, you get those little bit of loading stutters, even in smaller games like, I don't know, I'm playing Castlevania Lords of Shadow right now, and when you're transitioning between areas in a level, sometimes you'll get a little bit of stutter, and that's fine because it's loading off of the device and it's not generally during combat. But after that stutter happens, the frame pacing can kind of go out of whack for a few frames, and that's what's kind of jarring to my messed up brain, where I'm just really sensitive to stuttering. And once it happens after the loading, I'm like, man, I wish they could figure that out. So I'm really curious to see if in a game where I'm using FSR, like God of War if this is smoothed out, because I'm using the in-game FSR there, FSR 2.0, instead of the Steam Deck's OS level FSR. So what I want to know is if this only applies to the Steam Deck's FSR that's built into the OS. And also, while I'm talking about it, I'd love to hear from Valve if they're planning on updating the Steam Deck's OS level FSR to 2.1, because then we wouldn't have to mod games like Cyberpunk or even God of War to be able to take advantage of the new features, because 2.1 looks incredible even compared to 2.0. They've also done an update to the trackpads, but no, it doesn't seem like they've made them sound the same, which I know is an issue for some people, where the right one sounds different than the left one when you run your thumb over it. Unfortunately, they have not updated it to fix yet. I'm sorry, but they did fix an issue where small touches would be ignored on the edge of some trackpads, and some trackpads applies to me, so hopefully that actually is fixed. And then this is kind of vague, but I'm assuming it applies to the trackpads. They fixed unsolicited haptic events, which I think means like ghost trackpad vibration, which can be super annoying. I haven't experienced that too much, but I'm glad that they fixed it in this beta update. I haven't really messed around with the beta updates too much since back in July. One of the beta updates that brought along some good features also had some bad features, like breaking God of War and Red Dead Redemption 2 so that they couldn't run at 30 frames per second, and everyone was kind of sitting there like, why won't this work? And it's not really a criticism of Valve, right? Like, I was using a beta of the software, so things can go wrong with the beta, but since then I usually just stay on the stable software and then keep up with the features that they add to the betas, and then I wait for the stable update that has those features, or at the very least the stable beta, not the super preview one that has all of these super experimental features. I definitely would stay away from that one, but if you want to see what features are coming to your Steam Deck on the stable release down the line, that first tier of beta should be good to go. I don't want to say fully is good to go, because that's the beta I had issues with God of War, but overall I've had a generally pretty good experience. So yeah, I really like this stride that Valve has hit with the Steam Deck lately. They've been updating it left and right, making sure they add features people are asking for on top of the features they've already worked on, and everything just keeps getting better on this device. I'll go back to it again. I would love to see built-in OS FSR 2.1, because that's like the first version of FSR where I've looked at it side by side with DLSS and really felt like it was a viable competitor to DLSS and not just like something I'm using because it's the only option on the Steam Deck. Either way, because of that, I'm really happy with AMD right now and really unhappy with Nvidia because of the whole 40 series situation, where they're like, yeah, DLSS 3.0 is going to allow you to run games like Cyberpunk at like 90 frames per second at 4K and maxed out, but you're gonna need a 40 series card. When initially DLSS was announced as a feature that's supposed to make games easier to run on lower end cards and not something that you absolutely need on the highest end cards like a 4090 and a 4080, like why are these cards coming out that fast if the leap isn't big enough to be able to run these games natively, you know? And also the fact that DLSS 3.0 is that good and it's locked to just the 4080 and 4090 at this point, that's a joke. They should definitely figure out how to get it to run on the 30 series cards. While AMD is sitting there like, look how much better FSR 2.1 works, and you're gonna get it on your Steam Deck. That's great, that's what I wanna see.